We have entered the final week of the NBA's regular season. This time next week, we will have all the answers, or at least enough of them, to get to the postseason. So let's get ready for the final week of the Orlando Magic's regular season with a live episode here on YouTube and on X Spaces. It's Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is April 6th, 2025. It will be April 7th, 2025 at some point in the near future. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I am the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, a credentialed member of the Orlando Magic Media, and of course the host of Locked On Magic. You can follow me on Twitter at PhilipR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR, as well as, if you're listening as well, on X Spaces at OMagicDaily. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to break down the final week of the Orlando Magic's regular season, what's at stake, what the Magic have to do, and everything else. I will take your questions, so please come with your questions if you're watching on YouTube or in the X Spaces as well. I want to answer all your questions, draft, off-season stuff included. We'll be here for 45 minutes to an hour. I'm going to do my usual ad reads as well. This will be our episode of Locked On Magic for Monday. But before we do any of that, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. You can make Locked On Magic an even bigger part of your day with the Locked On Magic Daily newsletter, the one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start today with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Check that out today at FanDuel. So here we are, final week of the NBA regular season. I'm recording this at 5 p.m. Eastern time, so we are an hour before the Atlanta Hawks take on the Utah Jazz. So I'm not going to get too deep into standing stuff. You know, obviously if the Hawks beat the Jazz, they're back to a game behind the Magic. If the Jazz somehow beat the Hawks, then the Magic will be 2 games up and be in a really good spot to potentially clinch their play-in spot, to clinch the 7 seed, to clinch the better record than Atlanta at the very least on Tuesday when the Hawks come to Orlando to face the Orlando Magic. Obviously, this is a humongous game. The Orlando Magic spent their time at practice on Saturday, really kind of focusing on themselves. They said that, they did a little bit of Atlanta stuff. They took Sunday off. They took Friday off to travel back from Washington. They took Sunday off as well. And so a lot of it was spent focusing on themselves, kind of getting themselves right, kind of physically right, rebuilding some conditioning, getting some work in on themselves, and they'll spend a lot of Monday probably doing quasi-playoff prep for the Atlanta Hawks since they have the time. They said they touched a little bit on the Hawks on Saturday, but obviously this is a huge game, a playoff-level game on Tuesday, so please come to the Kia Center, make it a playoff game. Make sure Atlanta knows that if they end up in Orlando for this play-in tournament, they have no shot at winning. This is a big game for that reason. But obviously, we enter the final week of the season very similar to how the Magic entered the final week last year. Last year, the Orlando Magic beat the Chicago Bulls. They were 1 game away from clinching a playoff spot. They had a difficult road trip, a difficult road home. It was at Houston, at Milwaukee, at Philadelphia, and then home versus Milwaukee. They had a lot on their plate, and they needed just 1 win, and obviously they struggled. They lost to Houston, they lost to Milwaukee, they lost to Philadelphia. We expected that it would be a difficult road home. We said that at the beginning of August, and the Magic are kind of in the same spot this year. They're kind of in the very same position. I'm going to get to some of your questions here in a minute. They're in very much the same position. They control their own destiny. That's the only way to put it. The Orlando Magic control what happens this week. They win on Tuesday, they're in a really good spot. They win, honestly, forget the Boston-Indiana game. They win both games against Atlanta, they're probably going to be the 7 seed. Now, Chicago is 36-42. Orlando wins both those games. They're not guaranteed to clinch that spot. Chicago could still win all of their remaining games. They still have They still also have 4 games remaining. They could win all of their remaining games and tie Orlando, and Chicago owns the tiebreaker. But again, a win or 2 wins over Atlanta essentially does the job. It at least clinches the Southeast Division because the Bulls are at 35 and 43. Orlando's magic number to top the Bulls is just, or to top the Heat, sorry, is now just 1. It's essentially just 1 because I don't believe the Heat. It's actually 2. It's still 2 because Miami can still clinch the division tiebreaker. We'll dive into some of that because I see that question in the queue. But this is ultimately what you want. You want to be able to say, we control what happens. Magic win the next 2 games. They clinch the Southeast Division. It's really that simple. And let's go ahead and get to the first question of the day from Duval T87. What's the scenario for winning the Southeast Division? So we'll get to plenty more questions, but let's just lay out the scenarios as they are to start with. The Orlando Magic are currently 38 and 40. They can no longer catch the Detroit Pistons, so forget the 6 seed. They're going to the play-in tournament. The Orlando Magic are 38 and 40. The Atlanta Hawks are 36 and 41 as we record this. They'll play the Utah Jazz here in about an hour. The Chicago Bulls are 36 and 42. They're not in the Southeast Division, but we still have to consider them because they own the tiebreaker over Orlando. They can still pass the Magic. And the Miami Heat are 35 and 43. Let's eliminate the Miami Heat first. The Miami Heat can win a maximum of 39 games. Orlando's at 38. So Orlando's in a really good spot. Orlando's magic number to beat the Heat is 2 at the moment. However, a win over Atlanta counts as 2. The Magic and the Heat split the season series 2-2. The first tiebreaker between those 2 teams is division record. Miami is 10 and 5 with 1 division game left. Orlando is 11 and 3 with 2 division games left. So essentially, like the Heat play the Wizards on the last day of the season, so they're probably going to win that game. But if the Magic beat the Hawks in one of those 2 games, they'll have 12 division wins. Miami can't catch them at that point, and so Orlando would finish ahead of Miami in any potential tiebreakers there. So Miami, not too much of a concern. As long as the Magic beat the Hawks once, the Magic own the tiebreaker over the Heat in the grand scheme of things. The Hawks are a little bit more complicated, and I've had a bunch of people ask this of me. I have done the math wrong myself, so let's dive into it as we know it now. The Hawks are 36 and 41. The Magic are 38 and 40. The Hawks still have the game in hand. That is tonight against Utah. The most wins the Hawks can have, obviously, is 41. The season series is not decided, so the Magic number is technically 4. However, if the Hawks were to lose to the Jazz, that brings the Magic number down to 3. If the Magic beat the Hawks on Tuesday, that would theoretically bring the Magic number down to 1. Because a Hawks loss, Magic win, that takes away 2 numbers. However, the Orlando Magic are 11 and 3 in the division currently. The Hawks are 9 and 5. The Magic clinched the division tiebreaker over the Hawks with 1 win in those last 2 games against Atlanta. That means that if the Magic and Hawks finish with the same record, as long as Orlando splits the games against Atlanta, Orlando wins the tiebreaker. It's that simple. It's really that simple. And so that's obviously like a huge advantage that the Orlando Magic have in this scenario, in this case. The Magic essentially own the tiebreaker with 1 win. They clinch the tiebreaker with 1 win over the Hawks the rest of the season. So it could be Tuesday, it could be Sunday, but the Magic clinched that tiebreaker. So the Magic number is still 4, to get to 42 wins. But that drops pretty quickly if Orlando wins on Tuesday. Again, that is why Tuesday's game is so important for the Orlando Magic. It's just like having something in your back pocket. It's not even about anything else. Someone did ask me about this earlier, and this will, we're doing this live. If the Hawks were to lose to the Jazz, the Magic cannot clinch a better record than Atlanta, I believe, on Tuesday. Actually, now I have to do the math. The Magic, I believe, actually could clinch a better record than Atlanta on Tuesday. So we'll all be watching the Hawks and Jazz. I kind of regret recording this before the Hawks and Jazz play, but we'll all be watching the Hawks and Jazz play because that is obviously huge to making Tuesday potential, like get Atlanta out of our hair, and now we're really only worrying about Chicago and hoping that Chicago has one more loss somewhere. I want to actually pull up Chicago's record. Chicago is the only team that can throw a wrench in Orlando's plans right now. The Bulls do play the Cavs on Tuesday in Cleveland. They play Miami at home on Wednesday, so a tough back-to-back there. But then they finish with Washington and Philadelphia. So you look at Chicago. Again, Chicago owns the tiebreaker with Orlando. They're 36-42. Most wins they can have is 40, so the magic number is 2. If the Bulls lose one of those games to the Cavs or the Heat, Orlando only has to win one more game. And of course, we're talking about Orlando beating Atlanta at least one of these 2 games, if not both. If Orlando does that, they're going to finish ahead of Chicago. So Orlando, again, the key fact is Orlando is in control of their own destiny entering this final week, just like they were last year. And Orlando and all the Magic players have really spoken a lot about using the lessons from last year, like kind of using what they learned from last year to inform what they do this year. I've got a lot of questions in the queue. I want to get to as many of them as I can, but I want to just make sure we lay out what's at stake this week. Now, compared to Chicago, I mentioned they play Cleveland, they play Miami. Compared to Miami, they play Chicago. They play Chicago, but they really play New Orleans. They play New Orleans and Washington. I forget who they have in the middle there as they finish their season up. Atlanta plays Orlando on Tuesday. Obviously, they play Utah tonight. They play Orlando on Tuesday. Then they have they finish a 3-game road trip. They play at Brooklyn, at Philadelphia before playing Orlando again. Orlando plays Atlanta. Postseason team. They're fighting for the division lead. We can't say that we're definitively better than them. Then they play the Celtics, who maybe Cleveland clinches the top seed, and that hurts us against Chicago, but maybe they clinch a top seed. Maybe Boston is not really fighting for much. They got the 2 seed locked up. Maybe they said people on Wednesday. I doubt it. But the Magic play the Celtics and the Pacers before they play the Hawks. The Magic have the toughest road home. But really, a win over Atlanta and one more win somewhere. If they go 2-2 in these final 4 games, they're going to be the 7 seed. So it's not a high bar for the Magic to clear. I got a lot more to get to. I got a lot of questions I want to get to. A lot of them kind of off-season questions. We'll get to some of those. I want to get to as many of them as I can here over the next hour or so. So we'll get to that. But first, I do have to pay some bills. So we'll take a quick break coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. They give you surprising insights like realizing how much you're spending on food delivery so you can budget smarter and save more. They give you all-in-one convenience of putting everything in one app, or instead of like one spreadsheet like I have, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. I want to thank everyone who is joining us live here on YouTube, or if you're in the X Spaces as well, go ahead and raise your hand if you want to speak and ask me a question. I got a lot of questions I want to get to, a lot of them off-season questions. I want to get to those. As I did a podcast with a national writer, and we all just kind of like looked at each other. It's like, yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about the current Magic without talking about what needs to happen next in the off-season and what comes next for this team. So I want to get to a lot of those, but I think the first place to start and first place to focus is on the current team in what this team needs to happen, or what this team needs to happen. So, Duval T87 asked the next important question: who would they play in the play-in? Most likely Atlanta. The way the play-in works, I know we're still kind of new to it. And I've had to correct a few people on how this works. The 7 seed plays the 8 seed. Right now, it does look like Atlanta will hold on to the 8 seed. If you're looking at the standings, again, before the game against Utah, they are a half game ahead of Chicago, so they're not completely out of the woods yet. So it would be Atlanta or Chicago. I can't rule Chicago out anymore, actually, because Chicago is right there. Chicago won today against Charlotte. It is going to be a tight race. So the Magic might be welcoming the Chicago Bulls to Orlando. They might be welcoming the Atlanta Hawks to Orlando. And again, Orlando could still fall to as low as 9. Like you have a disastrous final 4 games. You lose all 4 of these games. You could technically fall behind Miami. I don't think that's going to happen. But there's still a lot at play. Don't take anything for granted if you're the Orlando Magic right now. Let's get to this question from D'Lo Florida at D'Lo Flaw. He says, do you think Goga will get some real minutes in the postseason? I think that the Magic are experimenting with a few things right now. And I think that Jamal Mosley's kind of used this as a little bit of a cop-out. It's going to come down to matchups. It's going to come down to whether the Magic feel comfortable with who's on the floor, how they can defend them. That was his reasoning for taking Jonathan Isaac out of the rotation for about a week and kind of giving Goga Bitadze a little bit of room to breathe. I do think, though, the way the Magic have played over the last several weeks, the way they played over the last several weeks, I do think that the Magic are going to lean toward playing Jonathan Isaac as the backup center. Now, it might depend on who they're facing. Like if Wendell Carter gets a couple of early fouls in the playing game against the Chicago, for instance, they may feel more comfortable with Goga Bitadze on Nikola Vucevic than they would a Jonathan Isaac. They'd feel very comfortable with Jonathan Isaac on like a Jalen Smith or whoever Chicago has coming off their bench. But that's kind of the difference right now. That's kind of the distinction for Orlando at the moment is they're going to match size with size. And so like, look, the Magic get to the playoffs. Yeah, I could see them playing Goga Bitadze a lot if they're playing the Cavs when they always have a Jared Allen. They always have an Evan Mobley on the floor, especially a Jared Allen. Like the Magic are very uncomfortable putting Jonathan Isaac on bigger centers. They liked him on Alperen Şengün. They did not like him on Steven Adams. They liked him, in the game Thursday against Washington because they play a little smaller. They didn't like potentially having to match him up with Ivica Zubac with the Clippers. So I think it's a little bit matchup dependent. Goga Bitadze's had such a weird kind of up and down season where he's looked really good, like above the rim play. There's now like some good evidence that above the rim play is really important for this team and maybe is important for this group. But at the same time, he kind of block chases. He doesn't give you a lot offensively. He kind of runs into Paolo's space a lot because he can't spread the floor. I know Wendell Carter is not shooting well. I know Jonathan Isaac is not shooting well, but they're at least willing to shoot threes. They're comfortable shooting threes. That's at least the role that the Magic envision for them, that they envision for themselves. Shooting is shooting at this point. But I definitely think that the Magic are going to kind of go by committee and be a little bit more based on matchups with how they play these players or not. So thanks for the question, D'Lo. Again, keep them coming. If you're on the X Spaces, if you want to ask a question, go ahead and raise a hand. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and leave a question. Here's a good one though, because I am a Wendell Carter defender. Kyle Hall asks, has Wendell exceeded your expectations on games played? Has a career high with the Magic? Yes, I would say that is a really good observation. It's not just that he has a career high in games with the Magic. He has played the most games consecutively with the Magic since he was acquired. I think he's actually got the most consecutive games. In fact, I'm looking at the stats now. He's played 65 games already this year. That is a career high. Career high 65 games for Wendell Carter. And if you remember way back in October, September, Wendell Carter made it clear that one of his key goals was to play all 82 games. He wanted to play all 82 games, and obviously his knee, the plantar fascia stuff, did not cooperate with him at all on that. And so, he's disappointed by that, and obviously I think he's disappointed by his season overall. He's, averaging 9.1 points per game, lowest scoring average of his career, first time under 10 points per game. But as others are mentioning now, and as I've kind of hinted at or told people before, Wendell Carter is starting to play a lot better. I know the offense isn't there yet, and it hasn't been there, but he has been really solid defensively. Since the All-Star break, opponents are shooting 50% at the rim against him, according to data from Second Spectrum. Among all players who face at least 5 field goal attempts per game at the rim, he is third in the league in that stat category. Only Isaiah Stewart and Donovan Clingan are ahead of him. So he has found a nice groove defensively. I just did a big video on my Patreon page. If you go to patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub, I did a 25-minute video on it breaking down how his defensive versatility has been really important for this team. He's guarding out on the perimeter. He guards 1 through 5. That's something the Magic really, really value as well. He's been really, really solid. And so if this is a sign that Wendell Carter took care of his body or is taking care of his health enough, has taken care of his health enough to play prolonged stretches, maybe there's a chance he could recover his statistics and recover himself a little bit, because, this is ultimately the big question. We're going to go back to a question from the beginning of the episode. Duval T87 asked, what are the biggest needs for the team besides a facilitator at point guard? I think we all acknowledge that point guard, that the guard play is the big difference for the Orlando Magic right now. And it's less like facilitator. They just need an organizer. Like Corey Joseph entering the starting lineup has been like a godsend. It has been so important and so good for this team, because he just gets everybody in the right spot. He brings the ball over the timeline quicker. He's more comfortable handling the ball, and even more comfortable handling the ball under pressure, which is, I think, just as important in this case. He's kind of been a good test case that having a truer point guard would really help this team. And the numbers back this up. The Magic's offense is significantly better since he entered the starting lineup. That starting group has a really solid offensive rating. I can, if you let me stall, I can pull those numbers up real fast. If you let me stall a little bit and find those numbers for you. But there, some of this is, would they be better with Jalen Suggs? Absolutely. If Jalen Suggs were healthy, I think they'd play a little bit faster. And honestly, I think that's the biggest lesson that we've learned this year, is the Magic just got to find a way to play faster. They're just a little too slow. They're too slow getting into their sets. There's some poor decision-making. There's some slow decision-making going on. The Magic got to move a little bit faster to get where they want to go. Here's the numbers, though. Corey Joseph, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter, most used lineup the Magic have had all year, 187 minutes. Has a 117.6 offensive rating, a plus 11.5 net rating. So they haven't lost anything defensively. You put Cole Anthony in that starting lineup instead, still a 186 minutes, still a 115.9 offensive rating, a plus 12.4 net rating. Again, I think that's coming from a little bit earlier in the season. So there's definitely a case to be made that a true point guard would help this season. Would help this team a lot. And so I do think it wouldn't shock me if the Magic are shopping Kentavious Caldwell-Pope this summer to find a more solid answer point guard. It wouldn't shock me, honestly, if the Magic look at it and say, we didn't get to run Jalen Suggs at point guard. Let's find a true point guard as a backup, someone who could be a spot starter. We still believe in the starting lineup. I kind of still believe in the starting lineup with Jalen Suggs in there instead of Corey Joseph, obviously. Let's see if that works. And then, or maybe the Magic are thinking, like, let's go find a real center. That'll help unlock things with Jalen Suggs healthy and all that. It's definitely hard, because the Magic wanted to run some experiments and wanted to see how things work. But obviously injuries have decided otherwise, and we can see these clear weaknesses. And I think, like, again, the biggest battle this summer, the biggest question this summer, is the Magic have to move on from being a developmental project. They have to say, we're done with these little experiments. We need to do what's best for winning. And look, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I think, has played fantastic. For most of the year. The shooting hasn't been what the Magic wanted to be. We're starting to see that shooting pop up now. Maybe they need a full year of that. I don't know if they're quite ready to give up on Kentavious Caldwell-Pope with everything they spent on him, but they're going to have to see what's out there and make some decisions as well. Let's get one more question before we hit our next break. Kyle Hall asks, will the Magic keep Kojo starting to move to Cole for the postseason? I do think the Magic will keep Cole Anthony off the bench. I think just generally they prefer Cole Anthony off the bench. He's just a good spark plug. They need the scoring punch off the bench. They need to spread out their creators. Like, more than a playmaker, they just need more guys who want to score. That's kind of the joke of the whole thing, is the Magic just don't have enough guys who want to score. They got Paolo and Franz want to attack off the dribble. They want to get downhill. They want to do all that. Cole wants to do it. Jalen does it sometimes. Wendell Carter don't want to do it. Like, they don't have enough guys who can create off the dribble. And honestly, like, this summer more than anything else, that's what the Magic need to find. That's why, like, this comment from the Drew Show. Walter Clayton Jr. should be our draft pick. I don't think that is necessarily crazy. I do think that Walter Clayton's draft grade is probably early second. He's probably climbed comfortably into the early second round. I think first round, even the Denver pick, which is currently slated for 25 or 26, I think that still might be a little early. I am not look, I love Walter Clayton. I love what he's been doing for my Gators. But NBA wise, I think that he's not efficient enough. He had a great game Saturday night in the Final Four, but he hasn't been efficient enough. And turns the ball over a lot. And just generally, I watch him when he's not on the ball, just does not do much defensively. He's just not into the game defensively. And that's obviously a big knock on him if you're the Magic, because they want two-way guys. And I know they got to start investing in some shooters. But I do have a lot of questions about him at the NBA level. I think he'll be a summer league darling. I think he'll show up. I think he'll score a lot of points when given the opportunity. But I got to know what he's going to be when he's not on the ball. He has to do so much for Florida. It's hard to project what he can be. But that's a point for the offseason. I do think they will keep Corey Joseph in the starting lineup. It has largely worked. There's no reason to disrupt things. I think they like Cole Anthony coming off the bench. They need a second ball handler next to Franz Wagner off the bench. They just need to make sure they have two of them on the floor at all times, and they really only have three. So keeping Corey in the starting lineup, even though you do have to hide him a little bit defensively, and that'll be a problem when they get to the playoffs. But I do think ultimately that is the direction that they go. I got a lot of questions here about the offseason, so we will get to some of those. And yeah, I'll go ahead and give my thoughts on what is going on with the Orlando Magic and PA announcer Paul Porter. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out and head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, let's get back to your questions. I'm going to stay on here for at least probably the next 15 minutes, depending on how many questions you all bring my way. So feel free to send questions, whether you're in the YouTube watching live, whether you're on the X Spaces. Go ahead and raise your hand, and I will get you on the show and answer your question. This one's been hanging around. I'm going to go ahead and answer and give my 2 cents on this. Shelby Hughes asks, what are your thoughts about PA announcer Paul Porter retiring after this season? Look, I am a lifelong Orlando Magic fan. I've been going to Magic games since I was a kid. Paul Porter, to me, is the epitome of all PA announcers. Anytime I've gone to another arena, I will fully admit, when I was jokingly doing PA when I was playing with basketball cards or basketball action figures, or doing PA when I'm playing 2K, I am always trying to mimic Paul Porter. To me, he is the standard, and so many other things, that you could say a lot about the Magic franchise and a lot about the Magic history. To me, I am very happy, and I think a big part of my Magic fandom is how great our television broadcast has always been, whether it was Chip Carey and Jack Givens, whether it was David Steele and Matt Gukas, David Steele and Jeff Turner, whoever it was. The Magic have always had a first-rate, one of the best broadcasts in the entire NBA, and that makes you a fan when you know you're going to watch a good product on TV. But going to games and hearing that deep baritone from Paul Porter, that to me was Magic games. And there's always that rumor that the NBA asked him to tone down how he kind of mocked some teams and how the game ops kind of mocked some teams in the 90s. It hurts. Honestly, it hurts to even think about somebody else being that voice for the Orlando Magic. Just it's going to hurt, probably not in the not so distant future, when David Steele retires. This does feel like it has been coming for a while. I don't have inside information to say whether the Magic have been considering this for a few years, but if you've been going to games, if you've been listening to him and the way he does games, it definitely feels like he's, I mean, look, he's 71 years old. I don't even think he's denying this. He's lost a little speed off his fastball. There have been, as Jason Beattie noted in his article on the Orlando Sentinel, there have been some pretty glaring mistakes, which you cannot have as a public address announcer. You are literally addressing the public. That is a 100% business. Everyone knows when you make a mistake. It's the same with play-by-play. Like, you can tell when guys are kind of tailing off, and unfortunately, unlike play-by-play where you can correct a mistake in real time, you don't have the opportunity to correct a mistake like that. And there have been some pretty egregious ones over the course of the year. I am not surprised that the Magic are looking to move in a different direction, and the Magic are preparing for that next phase. I will say, just reading what I've read, the fact that this isn't mutual, and the fact that the Magic's press release kind of seemed to pass off the blame, or say like, oh, he's retiring or he's stepping aside, when that very clearly isn't the case from what Paul Porter told Jason Beattie, the Orlando Sentinel. There's definitely a more graceful way to handle this. And even if the graceful way is saying, we've decided to move in a different direction, and we thank Paul for everything that he did, which of course they did say in their press release. I think that, sometimes you're like, honestly, like when you're firing somebody, you have to be the bad guy, and you have to just kind of own that you're the bad guy and take the hit. That to me, the only I don't think anyone is complaining too much. I mentioned this to a few people that, this is stuff that hardcore Magic fans care about and hardcore Magic fans know, but there's a lot of people that don't know the difference between the two or three guys that they've had at the Kia Center. I think the fact that they couldn't have Paul for a playoff game last year hurt. That is part. I think that is part of it. Since the Magic traded Dwight Howard, he has made the Tampa Bay Lightning his priority. He's always picked Lightning games over Magic games, at least since Dwight Howard left. And so I understand the Magic trying to I understand the Magic's perspective that it is time to pass the torch. It is time to kind of get a new voice in there, trying to establish a new voice. And no one's going to replace Paul, and it's going to be really, really tough to do, and it's big shoes to fill. The fact that, Paul Porter said in the article with Jason Beattie that he would have been willing to be a spot guy, to be a fill-in guy. And I think the fact that they're kind of pushing him completely to the side and not taking him up on that offer, something doesn't sit right with me there. But I do understand why the Magic feel the need to move in a different direction. It does feel like it is time. It does feel like we need a new voice. It does sound like the Magic are trying to kind of revamp some things in their game presentation. I think we're all anticipating a brand, like kind of rebranding a little bit, a new logo maybe, certainly new jerseys in the very, very near future. It is a new era with Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. It's very, very clear that the Magic have entered kind of a new generation or new phase of their franchise's history. And so I get not necessarily wiping this like clean, but providing a different soundtrack for that era. And again, like, Paul's been around for a long time. I don't like how sudden this feels. I know that he said that they made the decision back in June, that they made the decision before the season that this would be his last year. I don't think we need a whole season celebrating a PA announcer. Certainly a Friday news dump it felt very sudden to us as fans because we kind of weren't given a heads up about it before an official announcement. But I think we should celebrate him for he is really, really important part of Magic history. So, I don't want to dismiss anything. I understand both sides of the argument. I wish everything was handled a little bit better. I will just echo what Paul Porter told Jason Beattie, that, this doesn't change that he's a Magic fan, that he wants this franchise to do well, and that you should want this franchise to do well. Again, it's a small thing. But it stinks. It stinks maybe how it was handled completely, but I do understand where the Magic are coming from on that front. That's very inside baseball stuff. I know that's been the talk of the weekend here for the Orlando Magic. Let's get to some more questions. If you have questions, if you're on the X Spaces, you can go ahead and raise your hand, ask your question. If you are in the YouTube, just drop a comment in the comment section, and I will get to your questions. I talked a little bit about this, but Kyle Hall asked, I saw Zach Lowe pays attention to the Magic more than any other national press member. Look, Zach, this is why we love Zach Lowe. Zach Lowe pays attention to the entire league. He is not just beholden to the big markets. Like a guy like Fred Katz from The Athletic also does a great job paying attention to the entire league, letting you know what's going on with every team around the league when there's something worth noting and when there's something worth saying. And Fred Katz has had some thoughts about the Magic's offense throughout the course of the year too. So I don't want to just say it's just Zach, but yes, like right now, the way the way the national media is, whether it's TNT, whether it's ESPN, especially ESPN. ESPN seems obsessed with 2 or 3 franchises. And again, I think that is been a detriment to the league, the detriment to the league story. The NBA's never been better. Like the fact that the Magic with 2 all-star level players younger than 23 are scrapping for a play-in spot tells you the depth of talent in this league. And so I honestly, like, I'm really excited for the playoffs. The play-in is going to be a lot of fun. Like whether it's Magic Hawks or Magic Bulls, it's going to be a lot of fun. The West play-in is going to be a lot of fun. The playoffs are going to be a lot of fun. I think that there is a lot to be excited about for the Orlando Magic here in the coming years. Getting a lot of Walter Clayton questions. German Shepherd Ramos asked, do you think the Magic can trade up for Clayton Jr. since he won't be there at 16 now? Clayton's going to be there at 16. Honestly, Clayton will be there at 25. He does not have a first round grade in this draft. Again, he is a spark plug scorer, excellent getting his own shot. Turns the ball over a lot. Not much of a playmaker. I think he's older too. Don't forget that. He is a I think he's a 5th-year guy. He is older too. And so that drops you down a couple pegs in the draft, for whatever reason, drops you down a couple pegs. This is not Dalton Connect, where it's very clear, this guy has a role within an offense, not just as the guy. This isn't Tristan da Silva, where you look at him and say, the way he plays, he benefits from the way an offense runs. Walter Clayton is the system at Florida. And part of it is they play really fast. They put the ball in his hands. They allow him to make a lot of decisions. And look, Florida's been very successful with it. But if you look at his percentages, you look at his shooting, he is not like, I know a lot of people have been comparing him to Steph. He is not Steph Curry efficient. And so I'm not knocking the guy. I think that he has played himself into a better draft position. I think he has played himself into first round conversations. He entered the NCAA tournament, was not a first round pick. He was mid-second round at best. I think he's played himself into being in the top of the second round. I think he's turned a lot of eyes. He's had some really big moments, but I'll say this, like he had some he had a really good game Saturday. Like I am not taking anything away from him, but you look at his numbers. He is a 38.8% career 3-point shooter. He shot better than 40% from 3 just once in his career in college with Iona his sophomore year. He is an 87.8% free throw shooter, so the shooting does seem like it will translate. But this year he shot 39.2%, mostly on off the dribble stuff, 45.1% from the floor, averaged 4.1 assists per game, which is a nice bump up from his 2.9% average, or 2.9 assists per game average. The question I still have is, can he be a supporting player? Can he work within a defensive scheme? Can he work within that? And that gets me, this question hasn't been asked, but this gets me to like what I think is a big part of this offseason. And a big part of this offseason. And look, Clayton would check a lot of boxes for the Magic and really help this team in a lot of ways if he hits. But I'm not a believer in him as an NBA prospect. I watched him very carefully during this NCAA tournament. Again, I am a Gator fan. I'm really excited for Monday's game. But I was watching him a lot. He just is not engaged on defense. And I know the Magic can't be so sold out on defense right now. They've got enough defenders. They got to trust that they can teach their players defense, that they can trust how to build defensive players, or how to make offensive players defend at a higher level. But he looked like someone that everyone's going to target defensively. So I don't see him. He's not a lottery pick. He is not going. He's not going to be, the Magic. If the Magic pass on him at 16, they're not losing anything. It'd be a bigger reach than taking Jet Howard at 11, taking Walter Clayton at 16. 25, the Denver pick, definitely a little bit more possible. But like I said, it gets back to, I think, one of the big tensions of this offseason is the Magic they have to find creators, they have to find shooters. That's obvious. They're going to have to understand and figure out, where can we compromise our defense? Where can we compromise what we like in prospects to make sure we bring in the offensive players? And someone asked earlier in the chat, on YouTube about changing the coaching staff. And it would not shock me if there are a few changes to the coaching staff. It would not shock me if, certainly I think the Magic's designated shooting coach would not shock me if they let him go. Obviously this year, just kind of a disaster shooting wise. And it's just something to save face more than anything else. Again, it's just, some of it's just random. Some of it is you have bad shooting luck, and the Magic have a lot of bad shooters, and it just became contagious. I do think the Magic have to meaningfully address their offense this year. And so frankly, I get a lot of these questions about draft picks and all that. And I'm looking through the prospects. I'm still kind of learning all of them. Outside of Nick Clifford from Colorado State, nobody has really grabbed me. And frankly, I don't think the Magic need another 18 to 22 year old. I think the Magic need to go get a veteran. And honestly, so I look at these draft picks more as assets to be used in a trade. If the Magic, especially with the way the Magic played this year, they're going to need some sweeteners to get the things done that they want to get done. They're going to have to find some players that they should be looking at, and find some players to get things done. Over on Twitter, we have Just Jazz at JazzUBest asking, what are the trade targets the Magic should look at this offseason? And again, it's going to be the same things that we all expect. Thank you for the question. It's going to be the same things we all expect. It's going to be, they need shooting, they need scoring, they need creation. It's going to be a lot of the names we talked about at the trade deadline, because none of the Magic's targets, or people that we assumed were targets, got traded at the deadline. I think that we'll hear a fresh round of Anthony Simons rumors. Anthony Simons has, I think, 2 more years left on his deal, $20-something million. They can easily swing that. Cole Anthony, Gary Harris gets that done, and maybe that's something that they want. It's hard to know what Portland wants to do, because they were a lot better than they expected this year. It might depend on where Portland ends up in the draft. If they get a Cooper Flagg, maybe they keep Anthony Simons, kind of have a more veteran player to grow with him. But at the same time, if the Magic wanted Anthony Simons, I think they'd have him already. Simons has just never been asked to defend in his career, and he grades as one of the worst defenders in the league. I don't think the Magic are interested in that. Coby White. Coby White is a really interesting case. He's got a very affordable $12 million expiring contract next summer. He's got 1 year left after this season. The way Chicago's played, is Chicago going to want to dump him? What are they looking for? What are they looking to accomplish? They're kind of in a weird place too. But at the same time, this is the other part of that equation. If the Magic were to acquire Coby White, they can't play him or acquire him without trying to re-sign him, and they don't really have the money. Are they going to commit to saying, oh, the Coby White we saw for the last month is Coby White? Is the Coby White we're going to get, or we'll get enough of that to make do with the players that we have? I do think Coby White would slot in really well. I think he's not a great defender, but he's decent enough. He's a decent enough playmaker, creator, that kind of point guard style that the Magic are looking for, but can play off of Paolo and Franz. That's what they're looking for from the guard spot. But are the Magic going to commit to another 4-year, I can't do math, 4-year, $90 million contract to Coby White, when they're already going to be a first apron team? That's the other side of this equation, is that, yes, the Magic will be sending out $12 million, but they're actually making a $22 million investment. They got to take on at least an extra $10 million that they may not have. So I'm not sure Coby White is the answer either. I'm going to go back to the guy that I really liked at the trade deadline, Colin Sexton, someone that we know can defend, can take over games, can attack off the dribble, has turned himself into a really good three-point shooter. I still think that's ultimately where the Magic turn. It just depends what Utah wants and what Utah is looking for in this trade market. The other idea I've been bouncing around a little bit, I haven't done a whole lot. And this is the thing. We don't know who's available yet. And I think this was part of the appeal of waiting for the offseason. Is the Magic thought they were getting Jalen Suggs back, so they didn't. I think when they entered the trade deadline, they were really hesitant to make drastic changes because they thought Jalen Suggs was coming back. If they knew Jalen Suggs wasn't coming back at the trade deadline, I think they would have pulled the trigger on a trade to try and just salvage the season a little bit more. The fact that Suggs did not come back, I think Suggs' injury changed the calculus a little bit. In some ways, again, that's just me projecting. I don't have inside information on that. when you look at things though, look at teams that aren't going to perform well in the playoffs. Like we just don't know who's going to be available. Like we expect Phoenix is going to do a little bit of a dump off. Like they may trade Kevin Durant for what? We don't know. To whom? We don't know. Would Devin Booker become available? Would the Magic be willing to put a lot of assets into Devin Booker? That's on the high end. Like Milwaukee could end up trading Giannis this summer. That's not. It feels more possible than ever. Not that the Magic would be after Giannis, but that changes the whole landscape of the trade market in ways that we don't understand. So, like, if you look at, like, let's say there's a team out there that disappoints. Like, Minnesota could disappoint. Would Minnesota be open for business in some way, in some fashion, to maybe throw in a Dante DiVincenzo, a Jaden McDaniels? I know Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I believe, is a free agent. What does that do for them? If, the one that I'm actually watching really closely is New York. New York has been good. 3 seed, great team. But if they are, they haven't been able to beat the better teams in the league. They haven't gotten a lot from some key players. Could they look at their roster and say, we need to add more solid veteran players. We need to get more depth. Would they be willing to part? Honestly, like, this is the name I've been like kind of circling for a little bit. Would they part with Mikal Bridges? Now, obviously, they traded a lot to get him last summer in 5 first-round picks. But Mikal Bridges and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope make the same amount of money. We know Mikal Bridges can be a number one option. We know that he can take over games when needed. Would he be a better fit as a third option with Orlando? I know that doesn't solve the point guard issue and the ball handling issues, but would he be a better option? And would the Knicks be open to trading someone like him if let's say they play Detroit in the first round and lose to Detroit? The same way Cleveland nearly lost to Orlando. If Cleveland loses to Orlando, Donovan Mitchell's not on the Cavs. He's on a different team. He is not on the Cavs. They still fire JB Bickerstaff, but he's not on the team. That's how close Cleveland came to being completely broken apart. And that playoff series win probably saved that roster and probably saved that team when they beat the Magic in Game 7. Remember, like, JB Bickerstaff was being booed in Game 7. Like, it was bad. Like, it was kind of bad for them. And Orlando just didn't have the offense and the experience to finish that out. If New York, say, loses in the first round, that could be a team ripe for some change or ripe for some major change in some significant way. So you don't know who that team is going to be. Like Memphis could be a team that looks to reconfigure some things. I don't think Desmond Bane's the answer for the Magic either, but would a Desmond Bane become available? You just don't know who's going to be available at this juncture because the playoffs have to happen. And teams that disappoint in the playoffs will make moves. Now, I know everyone's kind of talking about LaMelo Ball, talking about Trae Young as potential options for the Magic. I've seen a lot of articles and a lot of talk about that. I am frankly coming to the opinion that the Magic should not pursue any of those guys. They don't need like a star high usage point guard. They still want the ball in Paolo and Franz's hands more often than not. They just need someone who can organize and pick up the pace. I've seen some Magic fans pitch trading or signing Chris Paul in the offseason just to give some stability. I personally think that's a Band-Aid. I don't think the Magic are looking for a Band-Aid. I think they want not a long-term solution, but a medium-term solution. Like Wendell Carter is a medium-term solution at center. The Magic will probably have to upgrade their center at some point. I think we all understand this. But frankly, he is fine enough for now, and this year has been a little bit more of a step back. He is fine enough for now that the Magic are more focused on the backcourt and guards. And honestly, like I think the issue is the Magic just need to add some offensive depth. This offseason more than anything else, just get some guys who want to score. Figure out if you can teach them how to defend, sacrifice a little defense perhaps, but get some guys who want to put the ball in the basket and can put the ball in the basket. Get some guys that are going to ease the offensive pressure on Paolo and Franz to create so they can get some shots. Like I want to see Paolo get a dump off to the dunker spot. I want to see him run more pick and rolls as the screener instead of constantly as the ball handler. They got to find some guys that can do that, create some versatility within the offense because the offense is just it's so easy to predict. And like that's the biggest issue and that's the biggest thing keeping the Magic from the next stage and the next level. So I mean, there's a lot of talk in the draft. I am not a big fan of this draft where the Magic are picking. It's really good at the top. I love the top 10. I am not a fan of players that the Magic are picking. So, like German Shepherd Ramos, big on the draft today. Luckily, it's a super deep draft, he says. I feel even if the Magic stay pat and had 2 first-rounders heading in next year they'll be ready to contend. I wouldn't trade for a superstar and gut this team. I agree with the latter part. I'm not a big fan of this draft. Like, it's just like, I know a lot of Magic fans like Edom from BYU. Dude can't shoot. I like Ben Seraph. He plays in Germany. He's from Israel. I like him. He's like an Anthony Black with a mid-range jumper, but he also can't shoot. He also can't defend. Danny Wolf, I don't like him. I just don't think he is like what you want in a center. Like he's really skilled, but turns the ball over a lot. And I don't think that NBA is going to help him in that front. Jace Richardson, I think he can get his shot off pretty well and has good speed, but similar to Walter Clayton, he's much more athletic than Walter Clayton. He's not the shooter that he is. But he's kind of small and he's not a playmaker. And again, like you need that. And it's like, you can do one thing and what? And I think, we'll get more into draft stuff as we get to the offseason, but I think that, to me, that's what I'm looking for. And Nick Clifford is really the only guy that I'm like, oh, he's a 6'8" forward. He defends decently well. His shot has come a long way. It's not maybe where you want it to be completely, especially for a senior. He rebounds, he assists, he can fit into an offense. That's Nick Clifford's the guy that really fits my eye so far among the draft prospects we're looking at. I haven't looked at Noah Esseng yet from France. I haven't looked at Nolan Traore yet. I know he's not a shooter either. There are a lot of projects out there. The Magic, I think, need to be done with projects. I think they need to be focused on what can help our roster win in the short term and hopefully grow into something in the long term. Let's close out today's episode with this then. Duval T87 asks, what do you want to see in the last 4 games? Besides 4 wins, win 4 games. Let's get to 500. Let's be above 500 for the second straight year. The big thing that I want to see in these last 4 games is I want to see the Magic continue to look like what they have looked like over the last 2 weeks. Outside of the loss to the Clippers and outside of the loss to the Rockets, the Magic have been really solid. I think they've won 8 of their last 12 games. They look like themselves again. And so really what I want to see is I want to see the Magic continue to be strong on the defensive side, obviously. They've looked really good on defense. Improve that rebounding, but they've looked really good on defense. I want to see their offense continue to click the way that it's clicked. And I know they're only averaging 113 points per 100 possessions in the last 15 games. It's not super impressive, but for this team, that's enough. And so to see them do that against a quality opponent like the Hawks, the Celtics, the Pacers, and then the Hawks again, to do that consistently over these next 4 games, they can go 500. They can go 2-2 and play well. I'm fine with that. If they lose to the Celtics and the Pacers and they played well and beat the Hawks twice, obviously that accomplishes your goal. But if they play well against Atlanta, get the win on Tuesday, have a good showing against Boston. Maybe they don't. Maybe they win that game. Maybe they don't. Have a good showing against Indiana. I just want them to play well and look like they're playoff ready. And that's, I think, where we're getting to. I think that's where this team's taken those strides over the course of the last month. They look more like themselves. And, I think if you ask Celtics fans, if you go to Locked On Celtics, if you go to Locked On Cavs, I'm sure they will do this episode as they're watching the play and determine waiting to see who they play. I can almost guarantee that they would all say, we don't want to play the Magic. Not because they're afraid that the Magic will beat them. They'll say that because they don't want to deal with the physicality of Orlando. And that's really what I want to see over these last 4 games, is Orlando just reclaim their identity. One last question here before we start to wrap up and log off. Kenneth asks, Philip, at what point will the Magic need to go all in to acquire a superstar so Paolo doesn't start talking about being traded to a contending team? Let's start with this part. The Magic are not in any risk of losing Paolo Banchero anytime soon. Obviously, it's the NBA. Anything can happen, but the Magic are going to sign Paolo Banchero to a max contract this summer. He's going to get the 4-year, 25% max. He's probably going to be all NBA next year. He'll probably get that 30% max that Franz didn't get this year. I am not overly concerned with Paolo Banchero going anywhere in the near future. I will say this. I don't think the Magic are at the point where they need to go all in on a superstar. But you are right. The clock is now ticking. He is coming off his rookie contract. You got 4 years to figure it out. this is a step back. This year's a step back. Even if they would have accomplished some of their goals, if they hadn't been hurt, they're not there yet. I don't think they need to go get another superstar because the fact of the matter is they have 2 stars in Paolo and Franz. Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner will both be all-stars at some point in their career. They'll probably both be all-stars next year. If the Magic are as good as we think they're going to be, if they have the kind of offseason we hope they're going to have, very real chance that Paolo and Franz are both all-stars next year. And so the Magic don't need to go all in. Like, I don't think they need to go get LaMelo Ball. I don't think they need to get Trae Young. If anything, though, the one thing that will tick off Paolo Banchero at this point in his career is taking the ball out of his hands. Right now, like, the way kind of superstar life cycles go is they get in the league, like, they're fine, they're enjoying things, they're learning the league, they're becoming stars, and then they chase stats. You know, they get the 30 point per game. Like Michael Jordan's career. Couldn't win worth lick in the playoffs, but he was leading the league in scoring, he was winning MVPs for the first time. You hit a certain age and you're like, okay, I've gotten the stats, I've gotten the individual accolades, now I need to sacrifice. And look, Paolo's not a selfish guy at all. Like, he wants to get others involved, and right now, I don't think he has the teammates that he trusts entirely to keep them involved. Like, that's why I think he kind of forces things sometimes. The Magic right now are at the stage where they need to get him the supporting cast that maximizes his scoring, that maximizes what he can do, so they can see how far they can take him by himself. Right now, there's no reason to think that Paolo and Franz will not work well together. There's frankly no reason to think that Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs is not a perfectly fine trio to start things with and to get to this next stage, which is, of course, winning a playoff series, getting to the next round. Next year, unfortunately, the Magic because this season was a bit of a lost year, next year for the Magic, it's going to be about regaining their spot. It's going to be about accomplishing that goal that they didn't get this year, which was winning home court advantage and establishing themselves among the top teams in the East. They weren't able to do that this year because of the injuries. They have to regain their spot next year. But after that, then yeah, they got to figure out, how do we get beyond the first round? How do we get to the conference finals? And that is the next stage. That is the part that Jeff Weltman has to prove that he can do. I still think I've told people this, and people kind of hate me for this. We're still 2 years away from the championship window being open. So I am not concerned at all about Paolo wanting or agitating to get out. At the same time, the Magic can't sit on their hands anymore. They've got to address these critical needs. They cannot just be this team and say, oh, everything's fine, we'll get back. No, this team is not good enough to win a championship. So they have to find a way to get better. The only way things get bad, the only way things start to fall apart is if they have another year where they're out of the playoff picture. Being in the play-in, this team should be a top 6 team in the East. Like no offense to Detroit, no offense to Indiana, no offense to any of those teams. Like, Milwaukee has fallen apart. Milwaukee ain't better than Orlando at full health right now. Like, just plain and simple. Like, Milwaukee is not better than Orlando at full health, even with Giannis. The Magic give them problems. They know how to play each other. The Magic have to work to regain their spot next year. And so they do have to do something. They can't just sit on their hands and say, we were injured, it's fine. No, that's not what has to happen. But I'm not worried about Paolo going anywhere. They've got 2 years to get out of the first round. They should be able to do that, but that's going to be the challenge for this team. They don't I am very convinced that injuries are a bigger part of the story of the season than anything else. So I do think that they will get better. I do think that they will kind of punch their way through. I do think that they will kind of find their way into the next stage. A similar question being asked here on the Twitter Spaces. So again, thanks for everyone who showed up on the X Spaces. Rooney at Stu3 says, I hear Dwight and Dooling talking about not repeating mistakes. Is Paolo mature enough to hear them? Look, no player in that young is mature enough to hear them, but I think everyone understands that the Magic are still in a really good spot. They're a really, really young team. They like each other still. This is the first season of disappointment. It's going to be on all of them to be better next year. That's part of the story too. It's not just, yes, Jeff Weltman has to do something and has to add to this team and has to kind of mix things up a little bit, and potentially disrupt chemistry. But the Magic also have to say, hey, you guys got to be better too. And whether Paolo and Franz will listen to that. Those guys want to be the best that they can be, and you can see that. So look, there's a lot on the line next year. Like next year, yeah, someone, a Mr. Business Traveler, asking whether Jeff Weltman's on the hot seat since they lack so much offensive firepower. I would say this, Mr. Business Traveler, this summer is more about Jeff Weltman than it is anybody else. All the pressure's on Jeff Weltman to make meaningful changes to this team to improve their offense, to get this team back where they believe they should be and back where they hope they would be. That is the next step for the Orlando Magic. That is the next step for this team. And look, Zach Lowe kind of called out Orlando media, and I very quickly said like, whoa. We've been talking about the offense all year. There's not much to change about it because they're not making any trades. And I said very clearly that that I'm more interested in talking to Jeff, in exit interviews than I am Jamal Mosley, to be perfectly honest. Like, I think there are ways Jamal Mosley needs to get better. And I think honestly, next year, Jamal Mosley, like, he's not on the hot seat. He's going to be the coach next year. But if the Magic come out slow, if the Magic's offense especially is kind of struggling like it's been struggling this year, then yeah, I think Jamal Mosley is definitely in a little bit of trouble. Like, he's going to, for the first time, everybody's going to be feeling a little bit of pressure, and they should. Pressure is good. That means you're expected to do things. But this summer is all about Jeff Weltman. I don't think like Jeff Weltman's on the hot seat or anything, but if the Magic fall apart, then we'll have a lot of legitimate questions. And again, like I understand why they sat tight at the deadline. I understand why they were hesitant to do anything at the deadline. I get those reasonings, and a lot of it was, Jalen Suggs was about to come back perhaps, and Paolo and Franz had just come back. They didn't want to kind of throw another wrench into the machine that was already kind of struggling to get going. But this is an offseason where Jeff Weltman has to turn off his development brain and start proving to us that he's a winning brain, that he can be the GM of a winning team. Same thing with Jamal Mosley. And I think Jamal can get there, to be honest. Jamal Mosley has to go from we're doing things to develop these guys and the players we want them to be to we need to win games. And look, he's done a little bit better at that as the season's gone on, but like everything else, I would argue Jamal Mosley is just a tick late on everything, whether it's timeouts, whether it's, everything else. It just feels like he's a step behind. And some of that's a development mindset of like saying, okay, let's figure out if these guys can figure it out. So there's a lot of pressure on this team for sure. And, again, I think that the playoffs are really vital for this. I've made this point a million times. I don't care that they're in the play-in. It's not where we want to be. It's not obviously the goal for the beginning of the season. You don't want to be in the play-in if you're a team like the Magic. We expected to be in the playoffs. The Magic have to make the most of this opportunity. Go out there, win a pressure game. Go out there, win a do-or-die game. Beat the Bulls, a team that beat you on your home floor a couple weeks ago that's super hot. Beat them. You've got two opportunities against the Hawks. You win both those games, you clinch the Southeast Division, you likely clinch the 7 seed. Beat them. Go do it. This is what you want. You want to put these young players in pressure games. Here are the pressure games. Go perform. Go prove to us what you have. And then when you get into the playoffs, yes, it's going to be tough. The roster has deficiencies that the Celtics or the Cavs are going to exploit. Some of them you already know. Some of them maybe you don't know pretty well. Go out there and play it. That's what this is all about. And that's why all of this is so important. I want to thank everybody who joined me on YouTube as well as X Spaces. I want to do these a little bit more often. Maybe we'll do them more frequently when we get to the offseason. Obviously, everybody's anticipating this year's offseason and what the Magic are going to do. I am trying to avoid thinking about these things so much because I am so season-brained. We'll dive deeper into the offseason as we get to the offseason. So I want to thank everybody who listened to today's live episode of Locked On Magic, whether you're listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, whether you're listening live on X Spaces. If you're listening on delay, thank you for listening there as well. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD or on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and wherever you download podcasts to your podcast-enabled device. You can find us as well on YouTube. If you don't already know, just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, of course, check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/OMagicHub. patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you made it all the way to the end of this episode, thank you for doing that. You have a chance to enter a really, really cool contest. The playoff race is heating up for the Orlando Magic as the season winds down, and they can secure a play-in spot this week. So stay in the know with the Locked On Magic podcast newsletter and get a chance to win one of these amazing prizes by subscribing. A $2,500 Best Buy gift card to upgrade your sports cave setup, a $300 Game Time gift card so you make sure you can go to those playoff games, or a $200 Fanatics gift card. Sign up between April 7th, that's Monday, and April 30th, 2025 to be entered. Our Magic newsletter delivers real-time updates, expert analysis, and playoff insights tailored for you. Subscribe now for free to the Locked On Magic podcast newsletter and stay ahead as the season unfolds. Subscribe today. Click the link in the description to enter or go to LockedOnDaily.com to find the Locked On Magic daily newsletter. That's good, dude, for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll be back tomorrow to start previewing that big game against the Atlanta Hawks. Until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. Thank you for joining us live. If you did, we'll see you all next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.